Romance, Arabic shukuk, is the feeling of love or intense attraction towards another person and the resulting romantic behavior adopted by a person to express that overall feeling and emotion. The Willie Blackwell Encyclopedia of Family Studies states that fantasy love or romance based on a model of mutual attraction or a connection between two people that binds them as a couple creates the conditions for the transformation into the model of family and marriage. This suggests that fantasized love can be based on attraction between two people. This interpretation was initially used by Western countries after socialization in the 1800s, with love being the necessary prerequisite for initiating an intimate relationship and representing the foundation for building the subsequent steps in a family. Alternatively, Collins' dictionary describes romance as the intensity and idealization of a love relationship in which the other is obsessed with extraordinary qualities, beauty, etc., so that the relationship overrides all other considerations, including material ones. While romantic emotions and feelings are largely associated with sexual attraction, fanciful feelings can exist without the expectation of physical consummation and may be expressed later. In some cases, love can even be interpreted as a natural friendship. Historically, the word romance has its origins in medieval ideals of chivalry, as seen in the literature of chivalric romance. Bode and Kusnik conducted a comprehensive review of love or romantic love from a biological perspective in 2021. They considered the mechanisms, development, functions, and evolutionary history of romantic love in psychology. Based on the content of that review, they proposed a biological definition of romantic love. Romantic love is an emotional state that is typically associated with a desire for long-term companionship with a specific person. It occurs across the lifespan and is associated with distinct cognitive, emotional, behavioral, social, genetic, neural, and endocrine processes in both sexes. It is characterized by partner preference, courtship, sexuality, and pair bonding throughout most of life. It is an adaptation and a subtype of behavior that has emerged during the recent evolutionary history of humans. Anthropologist Charles Lindholm defines love as any intense attraction that involves the idealization of another in an arousing context, with the expectation of lasting for some time in the future. Love is a feeling of affection and attraction, which people like in the present and want to continue in the future. The word romance comes from the French vernacular, where it originally referred to a verse narrative. The word is originally an adverb of Latin origin, Romanicus, meaning of the Roman style. European medieval vernacular tales, epics, and ballads did not generally contain the concept of love until the late 17th century. The word romance developed other meanings, such as the early 19th century Spanish and Italian definitions of adventurous and exciting, which can encompass both love and idealistic virtue. Anthropologists such as Claude Lévi-Strauss have shown that ancient and contemporary primitive societies had complex forms of love. However, there may not be evidence that members of such societies developed loving relationships outside their established norms that would parallel modern romantic love. Marriages were often arranged, but the wishes of those who were to be married were taken into account, because affection was important to primitive tribes. In most primitive societies studied by anthropologists, extramarital and premarital relations between men and women were completely independent. The members of temporary couples were more sexually attracted to each other than to anyone else, but in all other respects, their relationships did not display the characteristics of romantic love. Boris Shipov's book, The Theory of Romantic Love, collects similar evidence from anthropologists. Lewis H. Morgan. The emotion of love was unknown to savages. They are beneath the feelings, which are the descendants of civilization and the additional refinements of love unknown among savages. Margaret Mead. Imaginative love as it occurs in our civilization does not occur in Samoa, which is so closely bound up with the ideas of monogamy, exclusivity, jealousy, and unwavering fidelity. Bronislaw Malinowski. Although the social norms are not in favor of love, the romantic element and the imaginative personal attachment are entirely absent from Trobriand courtship and marriage. The concept of romantic love was popularized in Western culture by the concept of courtly love, which in the Middle Ages was characterized by chevaliers, or knights, who had generally non-physical and non-marital relationships with the noble women they served. These relationships were highly elaborate and complex, embedded within a framework of tradition, and derived from the theory of etiquette that emerged from chivalry as a moral code of conduct. The concept of courtly love and dominie was often the subject of troubadours and can usually be found in artistic endeavors, such as lyrical narratives and poetic prose of the period. Since marriage was usually nothing more than a formal arrangement, courtly love sometimes allowed for the expression of emotional intimacy that might otherwise be absent from the union between husband and wife. In the context of courtly love, lovers did not necessarily refer to those who engaged in sexual acts, but rather to acts of caregiving and emotional intimacy. The bond between a knight and his lady, or usually a woman of high status whom he served, could grow emotionally but rarely physically. For knighthood in the Middle Ages, the intrinsic importance of the code of conduct was largely as a value system of principles that were constructed as a guide to assist a knight in his capacity as a champion of the poor, but especially in the service of the Lord. In the context of dutiful service to a lady of high social standing, a code of ethics designated as a syllabus or code was effectively established as an institution to provide a solid moral foundation by which to combat the notion that unworthy attentions and affections would be tolerated as a secret game of faith behind closed doors. Therefore, a knight trained in the substance of chivalry was instructed with particular emphasis to serve a lady in the most honorable manner with purity of heart and mind. To that end, he committed himself to the welfare of both lord and lady with unwavering discipline and devotion, at the same time, presuming to uphold the core principles set forth in the code or syllabus of the religion he followed. Religious meditation was partly responsible for the development of chivalry as a morality and way of life. The idea of a woman's honor and knightly devotion to her, combined with an obligatory respect for all women, was considered to be the main central. The identity of medieval knighthood. Knights were increasingly imitated, reflecting the radical changes in the internal workings of feudal society. Members of the nobility were educated in the principles of chivalry, which facilitated important changes in the view of women's values. Behaviorally, a knight saw himself as going beyond the limits of preconceived notions of a lady. His virtue was inherent in his character. A chevalier must always behave kindly. He must be of the utmost courtesy and attentiveness. She echoed its shadows to all women, regardless of class, age, or status. Over time, the idea of chivalry and the idea of the courtly gentleman became synonymous with ideals of how love and romance between the sexes should be. Through the timeless popularity in art and literature of stories of knights and princesses, kings and queens, a formative and enduring subconsciousness helped shape relationships between men and women. De Amo, also known in English as The Art of Courtly Love, was written in the 12th century and is widely misread as permitting extramarital affairs. However, it is useful to make a physical distinction. Romantic love is distinct from courtly love, as well as when explaining such points as marriage is no real excuse for not loving. He who is not jealous cannot love. No can be bound by a double love, and when universal love is scarcely tolerated, some believe that romantic love has developed independently in multiple cultures. For example, in an article presented by Henry Grunbaum, he argues that therapists mistakenly believe that romantic love, or romantic love, is a phenomenon unique to Western culture and first expressed by the troubadours of the Middle Ages. Greek philosophers and writers have many theories of love. Some of these theories are presented in Plato's Symposium. 6 Athenian friends, including Socrates, drink wine, and each gives a speech praising the god Eros. When it is his turn, Aristophanes states in his mythological speech that the sexual partners seek each other out because they come from animals with round torsos, 2 sets of human limbs, genitals on each side, and 2 faces behind. Their 3 forms included 3 permutations of the sex pair, i.e. one male and male, another female and female, and a third male and female, and were divided by the gods to thwart the invasion of the creatures in heaven, according to the reconstruction, comic playwright, other myths such as Alloday. This story is relevant to modern love in part because it depicts reciprocity between the sexes. In the final speech before Alcibiades arrives, Socrates describes his love and desire as a lack of being, namely, a form of being or beauty. Although there are many theories of romantic love, such as Robert Sternberg's theory, in which it is a combination of mere liking and sexual desire, the main theories involve much more insight. For much of the 20th century, Freud's theory of family drama dominated theories of love and sexual relationships. This gave rise to several counter-theories. Theorists such as Deleuze counter-Freud and Jacques Lacan attempted to return to a more naturalistic philosophy. René Girard argues that romantic attraction is a product of jealousy and rivalry, particularly in a triangular form. Girard reduces the individuality of love to jealousy and triangular love, arguing that romantic attraction primarily arises from the attraction observed between 2 other people. A natural objection is that this is circular reasoning, but Girard means that a small measure of attraction reaches a critical point because it is caught up in mimesis. Shakespeare's plays A Midsummer Night's Dream, As You Like It, and The Winter's Tale are the best-known examples of competitive-inducing love. Girard's theory of imitative desire is controversial because of its alleged sexuality. This view has to some extent replaced its predecessor Freudian Oedipal theory. It may find some anecdotal support in women's alleged attraction to aggressive men. As a strategy of attraction, often combined with sarcasm, it is sometimes suggested that one conveys harshness and disinterest, but this may be a trivial or crude idea to promote to men, and is not given much understanding of the imitative desire of the mind. Instead, the development of a spirit of self-sacrifice with an attitude of admiration or contemplation, directed at the attraction of another, constitutes the ideal of what we consider to be true romantic love. Mimesis is always the desire to possess, while we give it up and offer ourselves as a sacrificial gift to another. This desire is often challenged by feminists, such as Terrell Moy, who argue that it does not account for women's inherent desires. While the centrality of rivalry is not in itself a cynical view, it does emphasize the mechanics of love relationships. In that sense, it echoes the capitalism and cynicism native to postmodernism. In this context, romance leans more towards fashion and irony, although these were important to it in less liberated times. The sexual revolution has brought about changes in these areas. Wit or irony therefore captures the instability of love that is not entirely new but has a more central social role, finely tuned with some modern specificities and the upheavals that emerged in various social revolutions, most of which culminated in the 1960s. Shakespeare and Søren Kierkegaard share the view that marriage and love are incompatible. In Shakespeare's Measure, for example, there was neither here nor there any display of affection between Isabella and the Duke, if by affection we mean anything connected with sexual attraction. At the end of the play, the two love each other as they love virtue. In Romeo and Juliet, by saying, "All united save all that must be united by holy matrimony," Romeo implies that it is not marriage to Juliet that he desires, but only to be romantically involved with her. Kierkegaard addresses these ideas in works such as Ether, Ore, and Stages on Life's Way. First, I find it ironic that all men fall in love and want to stay in love. Yet no one can ever shed any light on the question of what the loving, that is, the proper object of love, really is. In his 2008 book, How to Make Good Decisions and Be Right All the Time, British author Ian King attempted to establish rules that apply to most cultures. He concluded on 6 rules, which include: don't flirt with anyone unless you mean it. Don't pursue people you are not interested in or who are not interested in you. In general, express your affection or uncertainty clearly, unless there is a special reason not to. The attachment styles that people develop as children can influence the way they interact with adult relationship partners, with secure attachment styles being associated with healthier and more trusting relationships than avoidant or anxious attachment styles. Hazen and Shaver found that adult romantic attachment styles were similar to the secure, avoidant, and anxious categories previously studied in children's attachments to their caregivers, demonstrating that attachment styles are stable across the lifespan. Later, researchers distinguished between dismissive avoidant attachment and fearful avoidant attachment. Others have found that secure adult attachment, leading to confidence in the ability to be close and the stability of relationships, is characterized by low attachment-related anxiety and avoidance. While fearful styles are high on both dimensions, dismissive styles are low on anxiety and high on avoidance, and preoccupied styles are high on anxiety and low on avoidance. A practical definition of romantic love. Singer defines love based on the first 4 Greek words: eros, meaning the pursuit of beauty; philia, a feeling of affection and close friendship; nam, submission and loyalty to a higher or divine power; and agape, the love and gift of affection to a divine power. Although Singer believed that love was important to world culture, he did not believe that romantic love played a major role. Singer, 1987. However, Susan Hendrick and Clyde Hendrick, 1992-2009, of Texas Tech University, theorized that romantic love would play an increasingly important cultural role in the future, as it is considered an important part of living a fulfilling life. They further theorized that love and long-term romantic fantasy relationships is simply the product of cultural forces that have come to fruition over the past 300 years. By cultural forces, they meant the increasing spread of individualistic ideologies, which is the result of internal changes in many cultural worldviews.